Most of the plants sitting in American garden centers right now will be dead in your containers by August. Not because you did anything wrong, because nobody told you which ones actually survive. These 17 perennials come back every single year, handle, drought handle, neglect handle, everything. And the one at number 12 actually looks better the less you touch it. Let's get into it. Before plant number 1, drop in the comments right now, what US state are you gardening in? Because your USDA zone completely changes which of these plants will perform best for you. I will be calling out specific zones throughout this entire video. Find yours and pay attention. Plant number 1, sedum. Every leaf stores water inside its own tissue like a built-in reservoir. Sedum does not rely on you remembering to water. It relies on itself. Established sedum has been observed surviving 6 to 8 weeks with no watering at all, then recovering without permanent damage. Try that with almost anything else in a container and see how fast it collapses. Rich, heavily fertilized soil makes sedum grow tall, floppy, and unattractive. Leaner, slightly poorer soil keeps it compact, colorful, and well-structured. Stop fertilizing it altogether. This is one of those rare plants that rewards neglect, with better shape, stronger color, and a cleaner look every season. For varieties, Autumn Fire gives you deep copper-pink flower heads from September through November and stays upright in containers without flopping. Dragon's Blood stays low and develops vivid red foliage that intensifies sharply as fall temperatures drop. Matrona is taller and more architectural, with burgundy stems and dusty pink blooms that make a container look professionally designed with almost no effort. If you garden in USDA, zones 3 through 9, which includes Maine, the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, the South, and most mountain states, sedum works as a cold, hardy perennial and handles hard freezes without protection. In zones 9 and 10, give it afternoon shade during peak summer heat and it performs just as well. Water sedum deeply once at planting, then reduce to once every 2 to 3 weeks during summer. When fall temperatures cool down, stop watering completely. That is when the fall color show becomes one of the best displays in your entire container garden. Plant number 2, lavender. Lavender evolved on rocky Mediterranean hillsides with poor nutrition and almost no moisture retention. Moisture-holding potting soil is the main thing that kills it in containers. The same bagged mix most people automatically use is often the reason lavender fails. Here is the fix. Before planting, mix standard potting soil with 1/3 coarse perlite or horticultural grit. Use containers with at least 3 drainage holes and never keep saucers underneath. That one adjustment makes lavender dramatically more reliable in pots. For varieties, Hidcote is deep purple compact and the most cold-hardy English lavender surviving to zone 5. If you garden in the south or along the Gulf Coast, Phenomenal is the better choice. It handles heat and humidity better than other lavenders and performs dependably across zones 6 through 9. If scent matters most to you, choose Grasso. It has a higher essential oil concentration than any other variety and blooms continuously from June through August. Do not fertilize container lavender at all. Rich nutrients create weak, soft growth and reduce fragrance. The essential oil concentration, the thing that gives lavender both its scent and part of its natural insect-repelling ability, actually increases when the plant stays slightly hungry. With lavender, neglect is not just acceptable, it is the correct method. And here's one practical advantage. You can place lavender exactly where you sit outside. On warm evenings, brush the foliage as you walk by, and the oils release instantly. You end up with a fragrant, mosquito-repelling personal space that costs about $3 in a 5-gallon container. If you are still watching and you are not subscribed yet, here's what that means in real terms. YouTube will stop putting backyard yield in your feed. Not slow down, stop. The algorithm consistently delivers videos from channels it knows you follow. I post practical, experience-based container gardening content every single week that saves you money, saves you time, and helps you avoid plants that will fail before summer ends. Hit subscribe now. It is free, it will stay free, and it takes less time than reading this did. Plant number 3, Russian sage. Once Russian sage gets established, it blooms from July through October. That is 4 straight months of blue-purple flowers held on silver-white stems. Most flowering perennials give you 4 to 6 weeks of color. Russian sage gives you 4 months. In containers, that is the difference between a plant that earns its place and one that merely takes up room. It has no real pest pressure. Deer leave it alone. The aromatic foliage helps repel insects naturally, and after flowering ends, The silver stem structure still gives real winter interest when most containers nearby look bare and forgotten. In zones 4 through 9 from Minnesota down through Georgia and across to the Pacific coast, Russian sage performs as a dependable perennial and asks for exactly one maintenance job per year. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March. That is all. About 30 seconds of work and it returns fuller and with heavier bloom than the year before. In Zone 4, move the container against a protected south-facing wall before a hard freeze. In Zones 8 and 9, it may behave as semi-evergreen, keeping that silvery framework through mild winters and giving you year-round structure with almost no effort. Here's the part most gardening content leaves out. Russian sage often looks better in a container than it does in the ground. The restricted root space encourages a more compact, upright habit than open soil planting. Putting it in a pot is not a compromise, it is actually an improvement. Plant number 4, hens and chicks. This is the one container plant that actively tries to hand you more plants for free. The mother rosette, the hen, keeps producing smaller rosettes around the outside edge. Those are the chicks. Each chick is already a complete independent plant. You can separate one with your fingers, place it into another container with very little soil, and it establishes with almost no special care. The mother hen flowers once after several years, then dies. But by then, she has already produced enough chicks to refill multiple containers several times over. The plant replaces itself while expanding your collection at the same time. 4 varieties, cobweb hens and chicks, is covered in fine white threads across the rosette that look exactly like delicate spider webs. It stops people instantly. Red beauty shifts from green to deep burgundy as fall temperatures drop, with the color show starting in September and peaking in November. Pacific blue ice forms blue-gray rosettes that look almost unreal. If you garden in USDA zones 3 through 8, which covers most of the continental United States, hens and chicks handle hard freezes with no protection at all. They evolved in alpine conditions in the Swiss Alps, the Carpathians, and exposed rocky ridges at high elevation, with harsh summers, bitter winters, and almost no soil. Compared with that, even a neglected container garden is generous. They also thrive in containers as shallow as 4 inches, which makes them perfect for windowsills, wall planters, and compact balconies where deep pots are not realistic. Have you grown hens and chicks before, and did yours multiply the way they should? Some gardeners get dozens of chicks from one plant in a season, while others get almost none. The difference usually comes down to one thing: container size and drainage. A hen stuck in a cramped wet container uses all its energy to survive. A hen in a well-draining container with enough room spreads that energy into reproduction. I will explain the exact setup in the final section, but tell me in the comments what kind of results you have had. Plant number 5, catmint walker's low. This plant blooms for 6 straight months in American containers. 6 months. Many annuals cannot do that, and catmint comes back every year. From May through October, walker's low produces steady clouds of blue-purple flowers on arching stems above gray-green aromatic foliage. Butterflies are strongly attracted to it, so you get visible wildlife activity around your containers all summer, without planting a separate butterfly mix. And when the foliage is brushed, it releases an herbal scent that most biting insects do not like. So from one plant, you get color pollinator activity and natural pest deterrents. When the first flush of flowers starts looking tired in July, cut the whole plant back by half. It looks rough for about 10 days, then comes back with a second flush that is often heavier than the first. That gives you 2 full bloom cycles from one plant in one season. Most gardeners skip that cut, then lose 6 to 8 weeks of color without realizing why the plant underperformed. In zones 3 through 8, walker's low is fully cold hardy, and once established, usually needs water only once a week, even in peak summer heat. In zones 8 and 9, afternoon shade helps prevent foliage burn during extreme heat, but it still performs reliably through the growing season. Now compare catmint directly with petunias, the most commonly purchased container plant in America. Petunias need frequent deadheading weekly fertilizer and total replacement every year. Catmint needs one trim, no fertilizer, and comes back stronger every spring for years. The honest reason more Americans are not growing catmint in containers is simple. Garden centers make much more money selling you petunias every year. Before we go any further, hit the like button on this video. Not for me. Every like tells YouTube this is worth showing to more gardeners across America who keep spending money every spring on plants that fail by August. One tap can put this in front of someone who has killed the same annual 3 years in a row, and still has no idea these 17 plants exist. That is worth 1 second. Plant number 6, hosta, sum and substance. Hostas are actually more beautiful in containers than in the ground. Not equally beautiful, more beautiful. And the reason is specific. Containers reduce slug damage, which is the main thing that ruins hosta foliage in open beds. Containers also eliminate drainage problems. Hostas rot in poorly draining ground soil, but they thrive in a well-managed container mix. And containers give you portability. You can move them to your best display location in summer, then shift them to a protected spot before a hard freeze in fall. Growing hostas in pots is not a compromise. In many cases, it gives them better conditions than the ground ever will. Sum and substance produces enormous chartreuse gold leaves up to 18 inches across that seem to glow in shade as if lit from within. Halcyon has powder blue foliage that is naturally more slug-resistant and stays clean and attractive through the season with almost no intervention. Patriot carries deep green leaves with crisp white margins that look hand-painted and deliberate. In zones 3 through 9, one of the broadest hardiness ranges of any shade perennial available to American gardeners, hostas handle hard freezes reliably. In zones 3 through 5, move containers against a protected wall or into an unheated garage before a hard freeze. In zones 8 and 9, give them morning sun only. Afternoon shade is essential if you want the foliage to stay clean through summer heat. A hosta in a well-managed container does not need replacing. Ever. Every few years it divides naturally. You can separate it into 2 or 3 new plants and move those into fresh containers with fresh mix. I have container hostas going into their 12th year. One original $3 plant has produced enough divisions to fill 8 containers. That is the math of perennial gardening annual growers never get to experience, and it is one of the most satisfying parts of the entire hobby. Plant number 7. Coral Bells Heuchera. Heuchera comes in burgundy, silver, lime green, caramel orange, and nearly black. That is more color range than most flowering plants, and the color is there from the moment it breaks dormancy in spring until hard freeze in fall or all year long in zones 7 through 9 where it stays evergreen. You are not waiting for bloom time. You get color in your containers from day one. Palace purple produces deep burgundy foliage that can look almost black in certain light. It is one of the strongest foliage effects available in container gardening. Lime Ricky is electric chartreuse and brightens shady areas in a way very few plants can. Caramel brings warm amber orange tones that shift through the season, so it genuinely looks different in April, July, and October. In zones 4 through 9, Heuchera is reliably cold hardy. In zones 4 through 6, the foliage may flatten during hard freezes, but it rebounds cleanly in spring. In zones 7 through 9, it stays evergreen and gives containers color and structure all 12 months of the year. The mistake most people make is placing it in deep shade, then wondering why the color fades. Heuchera shows its strongest foliage color in bright indirect light, or with 2 to 3 hours of soft morning sun, not in deep shade. The darker the shade, the more washed out the foliage becomes. Move your containers where they catch morning light, and the color intensity can shift noticeably within 2 weeks. That single adjustment makes more difference than any fertilizer soil amendment, or other intervention you could try. Subscribe to Backyard Yield right now, and here's why that matters beyond the usual reason. Every week I put out content built around what American gardeners actually struggle with. Not generic advice that sounds good in theory, but zone-aware, experience-based guidance that works in your real yard and climate. If you are in your 50s or 60s and tired of replacing plants that never made it through winter, this channel is for you. It is free, it has always been free, and YouTube will only keep delivering it if you subscribe. Plant number 8, astilbe. When people see astilbe in bloom, they assume it must be difficult. The feathery plumes look like something from a professional florist arrangement, so people automatically connect that beauty with high effort. But in containers, astilbe often performs better than it does in the ground. In open soil, astilbe depends entirely on whatever moisture the surrounding ground can hold. During a dry summer, ground-planted astilbe struggles. The plumes come in smaller and the bloom period shortens. In a container, you control exactly how much water it receives. That control produces bigger plumes, longer bloom time, and cleaner foliage than the same plant usually gets in the ground. For astilbe, the container is not a compromise. It is an upgrade. Bridal Veil produces pure white plumes that seem to glow in shade with a level of elegance that makes people stop talking. Fennel has deep red flowers rising above dark bronze foliage, one of the strongest color combinations available in shade container gardening. Sprite is compact shell pink, ideal for smaller containers, and has won more awards than almost any other astilbe variety in American horticulture. In zones 3 through 8, astilbe is fully cold hardy and returns every spring with more flowering stems than the year before. Unlike many drought-tolerant perennials on this list, astilbe genuinely prefers consistent moisture, and containers make that much easier to manage. In zones 7 and 8, morning sun with afternoon shade is the ideal placement. After blooming finishes, do not rush to cut the spent plumes. Left standing through fall, they shift to a warm russet brown that gives real container interest into November. Then cut them back in late fall or early spring. Either timing works. Plant number 9, Japanese painted fern. This is the fern that makes people stop, look twice, and ask what it is. The silver and burgundy coloration looks like each frond was painted by hand. It is completely natural, completely easy to grow, and it does something in a shady container that no other plant on this list can do. It adds a metallic, almost luminous quality that makes everything around it look more intentional. Burgundy lace has stronger purple tones than the standard form and is the most dramatic painted fern option available to American gardeners. Ghost is nearly pure silver, almost luminous in deep shade, and one of the most striking foliage plants you can place in a container at any price. The classic pictum silver gray with a burgundy midrib down each frond remains one of the best performing varieties after decades in American nurseries. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, it dies back fully in winter and returns reliably in spring. Here is the mistake most people make. Do not cut back the old fronds in fall. Leave them standing through winter. They insulate the crown during hard freezes. Remove them in early spring when fresh growth begins emerging from the base. That timing protects the plant when it is most vulnerable. Compare Japanese painted fern directly with ordinary green ferns in containers. Standard green ferns look like what they are. Japanese painted fern looks like something from a designer planting. The care is essentially identical. The visual result is in a completely different category. If you are going to grow a fern in a container, grow one that earns its space every day. Plant number 10, Bergenia winterglow. This is the plant that proves container gardening does not end when summer does. While most perennials on your porch are going dormant, Bergenia is shifting color holding structure and getting ready to flower before winter is even over. In spring, it produces clusters of pink flowers before most other perennials have even broken dormancy sometimes, while there is still frost on the ground in the morning. Through summer, the thick, glossy leaves provide bold structure in containers. In fall, those leaves begin turning deep burgundy red as temperatures drop. And through winter, the evergreen foliage keeps its form and color, while nearby containers look empty and forgotten. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, Bergenia tolerates deep shade drought, poor soil, and temperatures well below zero once established. In zones 3 and 4, the winter color display is often even better. The coldest temperatures produce the deepest burgundy tones, and the contrast against snow or frost is genuinely spectacular. I have Bergenia containers that have never been fertilized after planting and only get watered when remembered, which in winter means almost never. They have never been divided, yet every spring they flower before I have even thought about opening the rest of the containers for the season. That is the standard every plant on this list has to meet, and Bergenia meets it with less effort than almost any of them. Think of one person you know who keeps spending money at the garden center every spring, keeps losing plants by July, and keeps assuming the problem is them. It is not. It is the plants they are choosing. Send this backyard yield video to that person right now. No message needed, just the link. That one action could save them years of frustration and hundreds of dollars. Hit share before you forget. Plant number 11, black-eyed Susan Rudbeckia. This plant blooms from July through October, pulls goldfinches directly to your containers, and becomes more floriferous with every passing year. After the first season, it asks for very little from you. One mature black-eyed Susan can carry 80 to 120 blooms at the same time. Not over the whole season at one time. That mass of golden yellow petals around dark centers creates a color impact in containers that is hard to match with any other single plant at the same price point. Goldsturm is the benchmark variety award-winning, dependable, compact enough for containers, and capable of blooming steadily from July through September. Prairie Sun has yellow petals with green centers instead of dark ones, giving it a fresher and more modern look. Cherry brandy brings unusual copper-orange tones that separate it from the rest of the yellow-blooming perennials in your container lineup. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, Black-Eyed Susan has one performance trait most people overlook. It usually looks better in its second and third year than it does in its first. The root system strengthens through winter and sends up more flowering stems each season after that. So a plant you buy this spring will usually look better next summer and better again the year after. You are not just buying a plant. You are making a compounding investment in your container garden. Leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter. Goldfinches, chickadees, and housefinches feed on them from October through February. Once the plant is established, the container becomes a wildlife feeding station that costs you nothing extra to operate. Plant number 12, lamb's ear stachys. This is the plant I mentioned at the start, the one that gets more beautiful the less you do to it. And the reason matters because the science behind it is one of the most interesting things in container gardening. Lamb's ear comes from rocky, sun-baked hillsides in Turkey and Iran. Its leaves are covered with dense, silver-white hairs. Those hairs are not ornamental decoration. They are a survival system. They reflect intense sunlight so the leaf does not overheat. They also trap a thin layer of dry air against the leaf surface, which slows moisture loss. When you overwater lamb's ear, those hairs collapse against the leaf, hold moisture instead of air, and the plant starts rotting from the outside inward. When you underwater it, the hairs stay upright, stay silver, and the plant becomes more visually striking with each dry week. With this plant, neglect is not the mistake. It is the right technique. Big Ears produces leaves up to 6 inches long and gives the strongest visual effect in containers. It is also the variety that gets the biggest reactions from visitors. Helen von Stein rarely flowers, which means the plant puts almost all its energy into the silver foliage. If pure visual impact matters most, that is the variety to choose. Silky Fleece stays smaller and tighter, which makes it ideal for mixed containers where you want silver texture without letting it dominate the whole arrangement. Hardy in zones 4 through 8. In zones 9 and 10, give it afternoon shade. The dense hairs can handle strong sun, but extreme southern heat combined with humidity creates conditions beyond what the plant evolved to take. Set lamb's ear beside almost any other container plant, and it does something those plants do not. It invites touch. People reach out and brush it without thinking. That tactile quality combined with the silver foliage makes it one of the most commented on plants in any container garden. And you get all of that by watering it less than almost anything else on your patio. Plant number 13. Daylily hemericalis. Each daylily bloom lasts exactly 1 day, but each plant produces 30 to 50 buds per stem. That math gives you continuous color for months from a plant that asks for very little after the first season. Daylilies bloom from June through September, multiply naturally every 3 to 4 years, and divide themselves into extra plants you can separate and move into new containers at no cost. They are available in every color except true blue and pure white. Stella de Oro is the gold standard for containers compact, reblooming from spring through frost and consistently reliable across American climates. Happy Returns is pale yellow and slightly more heat tolerant. Purple de Oro gives you that same compact, dependable growth in a deep purple form. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. In zones 7 through 9, evergreen varieties can keep foliage through mild winters. In zones 3 through 6, dormant varieties die back fully and return with full vigor in spring. Tell me in the comments what color daylily you already have or what color you want in your containers, because the variety selection is genuinely overwhelming, and I want to know what American gardeners are actually drawn to most. Plant number 14, ornamental grass Karl Forster. No other container plant does exactly what ornamental grass does. Movement sound 4-season structure and almost zero maintenance after the first year. Spring brings fresh green vertical structure back into your containers. Summer develops the familiar wheat-colored feathery plumes. Fall shifts the whole plant into warm gold, while seed heads actively feed birds. Winter leaves you with standing architectural structure, one of the few container elements that still looks intentional in January when everything else looks abandoned. Karl Forster feather reed grass stays narrow and upright at 4 to 5 feet, making it one of the most architectural container grasses available. Morning Light has fine silver-edged leaves, a graceful arching habit, and pink plumes in fall. Blue fescue forms compact blue-gray mounds at 10 to 12 inches, perfect for smaller containers and mixed arrangements. Karl Forster is hardy in zones 4 through 9. Morning Light works in zones 5 through 9. Blue fescue performs in zones 4 through 8. Cut ornamental grasses back to 4 to 6 inches in late February. That is the full maintenance requirement for the year. One task about 5 minutes, and then you watch the plant return taller and fuller than it was the season before. Plant number 15, coneflower, echinacea. Native plant medicinal history going back centuries, blooms for 4 months. Feeds birds through winter and is almost impossible to destroy in containers. Coneflower does more for your yard than almost any other plant on this list. It flowers from June through September with very little deadheading. If you leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter, they feed goldfinches, chickadees, and housefinches. The National Wildlife Federation has documented coneflower as one of the top 5 bird-feeding native plants in America. It also self-seeds into nearby containers, which means free plants over time. Magnus purple is the classic choice with larger flower heads than the wild species, a more upright habit, and excellent reliability. White swan is pure white with orange centers and tolerates a bit more shade than the purple forms. Hot papaya produces double orange-red flowers and is the most dramatic modern variety in this group. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, coneflower handles a very wide range of American climates, reliably in containers. Plant number 16, hellebore ice and roses series. This plant blooms in snow. While nearly everything else in your containers is dormant, hellebore is still producing flowers. It blooms from December through April, the longest single bloom period of any perennial available to American gardeners. Flowers come in white, pink, burgundy, yellow, and near black. The evergreen foliage gives you structure all 12 months of the year. Thick, deeply divided, glossy leaves keep an architectural look without asking for intervention. Ice and Roses Red produces deep burgundy flowers from December through March. Wedding Party gives you pure white double flowers from January through April. Penny's Pink offers soft pink blooms with darker veining and is one of the most elegant hellebore varieties available in the American market. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. In zones 4 and 5, place containers against a protected south-facing wall during the coldest weeks. In zones 7 through 9, bloom season can extend from November through April, which gives you 5 full months of winter flowers. Most gardeners spend winter looking at empty containers. Hellebore gardeners spend winter looking at blooms. That difference costs exactly the same amount of effort. Plant number 16, hellebore ice and roses series. This plant blooms in snow. While nearly everything else in your containers is dormant, hellebore is still producing flowers. It blooms from December through April, the longest single bloom period of any perennial available to American gardeners. Flowers come in white, pink, burgundy, yellow, and near black. The evergreen foliage gives you structure all 12 months of the year. Thick, deeply divided, glossy leaves keep an architectural look without asking for intervention. Ice and Roses Red produces deep burgundy flowers from December through March. Wedding Party gives you pure white double flowers from January through April. Penny's Pink offers soft pink blooms with darker veining and is one of the most elegant hellebore varieties available in the American market. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. In zones 4 and 5, place containers against a protected south-facing wall during the coldest weeks. In zones 7 through 9, bloom season can extend from November through April, which gives you 5 full months of winter flowers. Most gardeners spend winter looking at empty containers. Hellebore gardeners spend winter looking at blooms. That difference costs exactly the same amount of effort. Secret number 1, drainage kills more plants than drought. The number 1 killer of container perennials in America is not underwatering. It is overwatering combined with poor drainage. Roots sitting in waterlogged soil cannot access oxygen. They suffocate, then rot, and by the time you see damage in the foliage, the problem is already advanced. Every container needs at least 3 half-inch drainage holes. Add a 2-inch layer of coarse gravel at the bottom before you add soil. Never place saucers under drought-tolerant perennials. Water should visibly drain within 15 to 20 seconds after application. If it sits longer than 30 seconds, your mix is too dense and your roots are already at risk. Secret number 2, container size determines everything. A perennial in a 10-inch container needs water every 1 to 2 days in summer. The same plant in a 16-inch container needs water every 3 to 4 days. In a 24-inch container, that same plant usually needs water only once or twice a week. Minimum size for every perennial on this list, 16 inches across. Anything smaller defeats the purpose of low-maintenance gardening. In winter, small containers freeze solid. A perennial in a 10-inch pot in Zone 5 has almost no insulation between its roots and a hard freeze. The same plant in a 24-inch container has enough thermal mass to protect roots through temperatures that would kill it in a smaller pot. Container size is not just about growth. It is about winter survival. Secret number 3, the soil mix that does half the work. Never use garden soil. It is too heavy and drains poorly. Never use cheap potting mix. It is usually bark heavy and holds too much moisture. The right recipe is 50% quality potting mix, 30% coarse perlite, and 20% compost. That drains well, holds enough moisture, and feeds slowly through the season without synthetic fertilizer. Each spring, remove the top 2 inches and replace them with fresh compost mixed with slow-release granular fertilizer. 10 minutes per container once a year. That is the full annual soil maintenance routine for every plant on this list. Before this video ends, let me say this directly. If you are in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, you have spent enough summers replacing plants that were never built to last. You have spent enough money on annuals that looked beautiful in April and were dead by July. Subscribe to Backyard Yield right now. Every week I share practical content built to make your garden easier, more beautiful, and more rewarding, without demanding more of your time. Free and always will be. Now tell me in the comments which 3 plants from this list you are adding this season and what state you garden in today.